The story of the terrifying neighbor. In the evening, I used to stand in front of the house with my neighbor, Tom, who lives next to me in the neighborhood. While I was talking to Tom, I saw him looking directly at the house that is located in front of my house. In fact, the owner of this house is a woman called Courtney. I turned to see what my friend was looking at. I saw Tom looking at Mrs. Courtney, who was watering the flowers in her garden. I asked Tom what she was looking at. Tom said in a strange tone of voice, "Tomorrow is the day of purification and I will kill this woman." I thought Tom was just joking. Although Mrs. Courtney's voice is always loud, especially when she talks to the Spanish worker who works with her, this matter is not worth killing her over. Suddenly I saw Tom laughing, so I relaxed a little and was sure that what Tom was saying was just a joke. It's just a joke. I won't hide it from you. I don't like to stand in front of my house looking at my neighbors, but unfortunately it's Tom's habit. Suddenly, Tom started talking about a day of the year called Purification Day. On this day, a lot of scary things happen, as there is a group of people killing other people for reasons that no one knows about. At first, I thought that Tom was just joking with me, but he actually started talking about the importance of this day, and that it is the most important day of every day of the year. What is strange about the thing is that Tom has not been my neighbor for a long time. Tom moved into the house next to me just one day after the Purification Day the previous year. This made me feel very suspicious of Tom. I told Tom that I would now enter the house, but he said to me, "Actually, I want to ask you something, my dear neighbor." I said to him, "What do you want, Tom?" Tom said, "I want to borrow a tree trimming machine from you, as I do not have one." I said to Tom, "But you borrowed the electric saw 2 weeks ago and have not returned it to me yet." Tom felt sorry for me and said, "I promised to return both the tree trimming machine and the electric saw to you within 2 days." I was feeling. Tom was annoyed, but after some urging, she agreed. I gave Tom what he wanted and he left my house, and I went to talk to my wife, Sandy. Sandy told me that Tom's wife, Catherine, always spoke to her about the importance of the Purification Day. This made me feel even more anxious. In fact, there were only a few hours left until the start of the Purification Day, and I feel very afraid that Tom might actually be a murderer and kill anyone he knows that day. I warned my wife not to go out that day and waited for the cleansing day to pass peacefully. 15 minutes before the start of the Purification Day, I decided to go to Tom. I knocked on the door, and Tom answered me, saying, "Who is the knocker?" I told him that I wanted to get the electric saw back, as I needed it now. Tom asked me to come to the back door of the house. I went to the door. In the back, when Tom opened the door to give me my electric saw, I took out a sharp knife from my pocket and stabbed Tom in the neck. Tom began bleeding and screaming in pain, but I did not stop and inflicted more than 5 stab wounds on different parts of his body. Tom was looking at me and was amazed at what I was doing. Tom fell to the ground dead. I entered the house and found that the door leading to the house from the inside was closed. I used a hammer to smash the door. I saw Tom's wife, Catherine, in front of me, and as soon as she saw me, she started screaming. I followed. With Catherine, who was trying to go up to the upper room and hide there, I injured her in the foot, but she resisted me forcefully. I grabbed her head and hit it with the stairs over and over again until she also died. I searched around the house, but in reality, I did not find any type of weapon, but that did not matter to me. The important thing is that Tom is now dead and my family is safe. I then remembered the day of the purification the previous year, where I was exposed to such a situation. There was another family in the same house that Tom was in. He lives in this family. My wife and I killed all of its members in order to protect ourselves, my wife, and my youngest daughter from being killed on the day of purification. You may find this strange, but I always believe that the best means of defense is for me to begin the attack. Therefore, every year I would wait for the purge day to arrive and kill anyone I suspected might take advantage of March 21st, which is purge day in America too, getting rid of me and my family. As you all know, Purification Day is a day in which no one who commits a crime is punished, so murder and theft increased on that day, and I had to protect my family from being exposed to any attack. A ghost story on the road. The events of this story revolve around a couple. The husband, whose name is Nathan, and the wife, whose name is Hades. The couple had recently gotten married and were on their way to California to spend their honeymoon. The road to California was a little dangerous, especially at night. The road was very winding, and it ran in the middle of a forest. The big one, though, was that Nathan decided to drive at night, but he was driving very carefully. While Nathan was driving his car at night, with trees filling the road, he noticed something suspicious from afar. Nathan noticed that there was a girl, no more than 7 years old, standing on the side of the road and pointing with her hand as if asking Nathan to take her with him. Nathan felt surprised, as the area in which the girl was standing was completely cut off, and there were no residents nearby. Nathan did not like it and decided to continue on his way, but his wife Hades had a different opinion. Nathan passed the little girl and did not stop, but his wife begged him to go back to the girl again and pick her up. Nathan was forced to return again to the girl, who seemed happy because Nathan had returned to her. When Nathan stopped the car near the girl, he asked her, "Where are you going, little girl?" The little girl said, "After about 1 kilometer from here, there is a crossroads. To your left you will find an abandoned factory, and to your right there is a large palace. I live in that palace, but I was playing outside the house and lost the way." Here, Nathan's heart relaxed a little. Had said, "I told you, my husband, there is nothing there." Worried about this little girl, the girl got into the car and Nathan drove off on his way. Heads tried to talk to the little girl, but she did not answer. At that time, the couple thought that the girl was sleeping in the back, as she seemed to be very tired. When Nathan reached the crossroads, he looked back to wake the girl, but he did not find her. The shock was great. Where had the girl disappeared? How did you manage to get out of the car? Nathan decided to go to that palace and tell its residents that their daughter was alone in the forest, so perhaps they would all go out to search for her and find her before she was harmed. Nathan and Hades went to the palace. They were met by an old man and woman. Nathan told the man and woman everything that had happened to him about that little girl. After Nathan finished speaking, the man said, "Son, that girl that our daughter is talking about has been dead for a while. She is 18 years old, and she always does this because her soul is angry. She died in a traffic accident on the same road." Heads felt very afraid when she heard these words. In the end, the couple decided to continue their way to California and never stop for anyone, no matter what happened or what their appearance was. The house is haunted. Sahar insisted on putting an end to the myth surrounding that house on the high hill on the outskirts of his village, the cursed house, as they have called it in the village for years. So Sahar waited for darkness to fall so that no one would see him and try to prevent him. Then he climbed the high hill to the house, and after about half an hour of climbing, the continuous journey reached its goal. He finally reached the cursed house as he wanted and achieved his goal, and here he stood in front of it, bewildered, contemplating it closely and looking at it with amazement. This old house, built on one of the high hills on the outskirts of his village, overlooks all parts of the village. Whoever stands on its high balcony will see almost the entire village, and all the villagers will see it clearly. Here Sahar wondered, saying to himself nervously, "It is astonishing, as if the house was built to monitor the villagers and spy on them. How did I not notice this before? I do not understand. How did no one notice it?" His plan was as follows: to enter the house, breaking into its door that never closes, in the face of its visitors, as he heard from the villagers. Repeatedly, he enters his high balcony, then puts up that black flag, on which was written in red, "What are you afraid of, you cowards?" at the top of the balcony, and then he waved to everyone sarcastically, saying, "This is the house you fear like death, but you were wrong, you ignorant ones." And here Sahar smiled happily, as he imagined himself as the first hero of the village, the conqueror of myths, and the destroyer of myths, for it was the house, a source of endless rumors and rumors for many years. All the people of the village feared him like death and could not look into his windows because of the many rumors surrounding them and that there were red eyes watching you. And the eyes would continue to watch you and follow you until you were killed afterwards or he committed suicide. So Sahar looked contemplating those many windows surrounding the house. Perhaps he would see those red eyes. He did not find anything at all, just closed windows, with nothing behind them but gloomy darkness. What caught his attention and his astonishment was that those windows did not contain a speck of dirt or dust, or even the home of a stray spider here and there. He wondered in amazement, telling himself, "Wow, despite the fact that this house has existed for centuries in the village, but it does not appear to have changed over time or age, as if it was recently built." Here his thoughts wandered and he remembered that day when his grandfather disappeared or died. He does not really know what exactly happened that night, but he remembers everything, despite his young age at the time and the passage of years and his being away from the village for years. but he still remembers everything clearly as if it had happened only yesterday. One cannot forget that night easily. Remember the elderly grandfather on his deathbed, trembling, his frightened, shaking voice, that conversation, and that fateful night. The weather was very hot in the middle of August, in the village in which Sahar and his family lived. In one of the governorates of southern Egypt, where the temperature was high, but this did not prevent the grandfather from shivering in the cold. His children tried to put more covers on him and try to calm him down. But the grandfather was screaming in horror that they would not leave him. He was trembling and shivering in the cold, and his face was blue and his hands were blue and cold as ice. He was standing in a far place, trembling violently, and looking at his beloved grandfather as he cried in distress. Sahar loved him very much and feared for him, so the grandfather called to the boy, saying, "Come closer, Sahar. Come closer, there is no time, my son. Come quickly so I can tell you everything, my son. Don't forget to tell us your opinion about the story and whether it met your admiration and expectations as desired or not through the comments below the topic. We are always happy to provide everything that is new, interesting, and entertaining, especially for fans of horror and suspense, which is my favorite section on the Realistic Stories website. Don't forget to tell us also about your favorite writer on the site and your favorite section through the comments." Sahar looked in horror at his grandfather, frightened and not knowing what to do. But the child approached his grandfather cautiously, and the grandfather held the little one's hand between his fingertips. Then he said in a low voice and with hot, fiery breaths as if they were coming out of a burning oven, "Do not come near that house, Sahar. Promise me, my son. You look at his dark windows. They're always looking, my son." The boy responded in horror, asking, "What house, grandfather? I don't understand anything." Here the grandfather pressed hard on the little boy's hand, saying, "The cursed house, Sahar, is on the outskirts of the village, on top of the hill. Never go there, no matter what happens." The grandfather repeated his words as he squeezed the little boy's hand. "Promise me, my son, promise me that they will never leave you after what you did." Here the boy screamed in pain from his grandmother's fingernails, which were violently embedded in the flesh of his little hands, and he was crying, saying, "Leave me, grandfather, please. My hand hurts so much, and I cannot let go of my hand, grandfather." At that moment, the father entered and saw his son screaming in pain and trying to get away from the grandfather while he was screaming. But the grandfather, he was clinging to him tightly and holding him tightly. So the father shouted, saying, "Leave him, father. Please. You are hurting him, and he does not understand anything you are saying. Please, father, leave him now." Here the grandfather looked at his son sharply and said, "I will not leave him until he promises me not to go there." The grandfather turned to the boy who was still screaming in pain, and their eyes met, and Sahar screamed in horror when he saw the color of his grandmother's eyes change, and they became all white as milk. And here, Sahar fell unconscious from extreme tension, terror, and pain, and he did not remember anything. Then, when he woke up, his mother told him that his grandfather had died. But the marks of the grandfather's fingers were clearly visible on his hands, as if they were traces of a brown burn. Since that time, that house on the high hill was in front of his eyes. He saw it during the day and dreamed of it at night. The father decided to leave the village and go to a big city to live with his only son, Sahar. But Sahar, the young child, did not forget the sight of his grandfather. Neither his eyes nor the house for a single moment. At that moment, Sahar looked at the traces of his grandfather's fingers on his hands, then sighed fervently, saying, "Forgive me, grandfather. I must kill this myth and enter the house. The house has turned my life into hell, and I can no longer distinguish between night and day.